Olympics, everyone in the world remembers them. The magnificent Winter Olympics that you hosted. Second, I think of a theme that's actually connected to the Olympics, but that goes beyond athletic competition, and that's peace. What better place to renew our commitment to global peace than to join in this forum in Gangwon-do, which is a divided province, divided by the BMC, right at the heart of one of the world's continuing challenges to peace. And so the spirit of peace embodied in this forum has a special meaning given the place where we are gathered, at least virtually and in spirit. In fact, I remember that some years ago, when I traveled to South Korea along with my son, we made a visit to the DMZ. And so we saw firsthand what this special place looks like. And it was impossible to visit the DMZ without coming away with a keen sense of the challenge to world peace that you and this forum represent. I mentioned a third thing that I think about when I think about Gangwon-do, and that is its remarkable natural beauty. The mountains that go all the way to the sea, the national parks, the beaches, and the spirit of the people shaped by living in a place of great natural wonder. So this is what I think about, and when I think about Gangwon-do. And I look forward to the time when I can visit your beautiful province in person. But for now, let me turn to one of the central challenges that all of us face, but that Gangwon province faces with special urgency. And that is how to balance economic development to meet the needs of the people so that incomes can grow. How to balance that with an appreciation of the wonders of the natural gifts that the earth and the mountains and the forests provide. Now, I have to speak here with a certain humility. I am not an expert on how, in the context of Gangwon-do, with your history, with your culture, with your civic life, how you exactly should strike the balance between appreciation of the natural wonders of your province, the mountains and the forests, with economic development. I am aware that the tension between these two values has been the subject of debate, even controversy, recently. Because the question arises, so I've learned, about whether to maintain the alpine ski lift that can take tourists to ski up in the mountains, the cable car system, or whether to take it down and to try to rebuild the forest. The forest, some of which was taken down to make way for the Winter Olympics. Now, I said I'm not an expert enough in the local circumstances. These have to be decisions discussed among the citizens of Gangwon-do. But I can suggest this. Decisions about how to weigh and balance important competing human values, economic development, and respect for nature and the environment have to be decided through reasoned, respectful discussion and debate among democratic citizens. Whatever decision the province makes, and I'm aware that the Korean Forest Service has its own opinion about what should be done, whatever decisions are to be made of this importance have to involve every sector of the society. During the visits I've been privileged to make in recent years to South Korea, I've had the opportunity to meet in public gatherings with large numbers of Koreans, many of them young people, many of them of university age. And I've been struck by a tremendous hunger, desire on the part of South Koreans, and especially young people, to reason together in public about hard questions of values. What makes for a fair society? What should we do about growing inequality? And how can we balance economic development with respect for a sustainable approach to nature, to the earth that we share? This dilemma, this question, would make for exactly the kind of question that I ask my students at Harvard. And then I asked the participants in the public events when I visit Korea to try to bring people together, to reason together, even when they disagree. Some people may say, we need more tourism if we're to develop economically. And that means building a chairlift to enable skiers to go up the mountain and ski. And others will say, no, when we built that alpine center for the Olympics, it was with the understanding that we would replant and rebuild the trees that we had to tear down. I can imagine that this would be the starting point for a debate. What matters is that all citizens, all parts of the society have a voice in that debate and an opportunity to address directly these competing values. Now, sometimes when this happens, reasoned public debate on the basis of mutual respect, sometimes people find ways to achieve and to respect both values, to develop the economy while also respecting the earth and the forests and the mountains. It's a mistake to assume that debates on hard questions of values like this will lead everyone to agree. That may not happen. But if the debate is respectful, if everyone's voice is heard, then even if not everyone agrees, whatever decision is made is more likely to win the support and the respect of the citizens the citizens generally, because they know their voice will have been heard. Now, there is another set of great dilemmas and hard moral choices facing all of us today. And that, of course, is the COVID-19 pandemic. I am struck by the fact that we in the United States have a lot to learn from the way South Korea has handled the coronavirus pandemic. We in the US, I must confess, have handled it very poorly. We have more deaths than any other country. We have more deaths per capita, I'm sorry to admit, than a great many countries, far more than South Korea. So what lessons can we learn from this? Some are lessons about how to deal with a pandemic. South Korea was much better at testing and contact tracing, and much better at wearing masks than we Americans. So I wish that we could learn some of these lessons from South Korea, but there's something else that I think has been central to the success of South Korea, and that is the spirit of mutual obligation that we saw when I read, for example, that some landlords would accept a lower rent from their tenants voluntarily in South Korea, knowing that the crisis has made it very difficult for many people to pay their full rent. This voluntary action within civil society is something that I admire. It reflects a spirit of shared sacrifice, a sense that we are all in this together. And I wish that we in the United States could learn from that spirit. Yes, it's very important for the government to organize a coherent and a strong response. But the willingness of citizens to take responsibility and to make sacrifices for their fellow citizens, that is a precious kind of solidarity that goes a long way toward enabling a society to make its way through a crisis such as this. So these seem to me deep questions of values. When the pandemic arrived, we knew that this was a public health challenge, that this was a medical challenge. And some countries have responded better than others. But what we're beginning to notice is that it is also a moral and civic challenge. Because however good the medical care and the public health expertise, we learn that we can't confront crises such as this pandemic without a strong sense of social solidarity, without pulling together as a society, as a community, and taking responsibility for one another's fate. We often hear a slogan: we are all in this together. We hear this from politicians, from celebrities, from advertisers. We are all in this together. And in certain ways, that's true. This pandemic brings out the sense in which we are mutually dependent. We are all in this together. But the pandemic arrived at a time when the gap between rich and poor had been increasing, when the divide between winners and losers were pulling us apart, We've seen this inequality deepen in the United States, and South Korea also has struggled with deepening inequality in recent decades. Now, up to a certain point, societies can manage with inequality, even growing inequality. But when a crisis such as this pandemic arises, it tests us. It tests our ability to think and act together, to care for one another. And when the divide between winners and losers becomes too great, when the divide between rich and poor becomes too vast, it becomes more and more difficult to think of ourselves as sharing a common fate. So, we've seen a crisis and challenge of community with the COVID-19 pandemic, and in broader terms, we are all struggling with the central theme of this forum, which is how to protect the earth for future generations, while at the same time deepening our common humanity. I began by suggesting that economic development and protecting the earth are sometimes competing values. But it seems to me that a true ethic of respect for nature, for the earth, requires a harmonious relation not only between humanity and the earth, but also among fellow citizens. I don't think we will learn to treat the earth, to treat nature with respect until we learn to treat one another with respect. And so in the end, respecting our shared humanity and aspiring for world peace may not be so different a moral aspiration than respecting the earth and seeking a harmony with nature. Thank you very much.